Okay, let's see. Now we got 45 seconds before we can start. This down here. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6. Jake. Good afternoon. We welcome you to this electronic meeting of the West Valley City Council. This is our study meeting. We'll begin with the required official statement for our electronic meeting. Pursuant to Utah Code, West Valley City has determined that this meeting will be held electronically without an anchor location given the ongoing novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. West Valley City has determined the pandemic presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at an anchor location. This meeting will be held electronically. Members of the press and public are invited to view this meeting live on YouTube at www.youtube.com/user/WVCTV. Thank you, and we note that all council members are present at our meeting tonight. And so as we go down our agenda, we have our minutes of April 20th from our last meeting. Any motion on the minutes?
Move to accept those minutes.
Second.
Got it before us. So with that then, without objection, the minutes will be approved. And since there's no objection, that's unanimous. Reviewing our agenda for our meeting again a little bit later today. I don't believe there were any changes to that. Anything we need to cover for here? Okay, then we'll move on to, let's see, resolutions. Our first one is on our budget, Resolution 21-63 for our budget for July 1st of this year through June 30th of next year. And we will set a date for a public hearing on the budget, which will be in August, it's August 10th. So let's see, who's going to, Nicole, are you going to make comments on this?
Mayor, I am not going to make comments, but I know that Wayne wants to. He's just having technical difficulties. So
that's
my thought is, yeah, maybe if we could just skip to another agenda item and come back and give him just
no.
minutes.
It looks like maybe he's getting.
I'm on. Yep, I'm on.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
There he is.
What was the question?
No, we're just wanting to talk about the budget. I assume you're going to make some comments on it.
Yes. Are we already there on the agenda?
Yes, we are.
Okay, sorry, Mayor.
If you weren't sitting out in the park and, there in the dark, why? Wait a minute, it's not dark.
Right, yeah. Okay, so I apologize. I actually got a last second call about some vaccine update that I needed to take, so I apologize for being late.
Yeah, fine.
Okay, well, let me give you a start. So I know you all as a document have the budget as an attachment to the meeting. So any of the numbers that you want to look at, they're there and available, but I'm not going to spend my time and comments running through the numbers per se. What I really want to talk about is the process of what we've done over the last couple of 3 months and where we're at and what we're recommending as a concept. So The budget is balanced. A couple of preface standpoints. The budget is balanced, and it is balanced without any kind of recommendation for any kind of tax increase or anything other than any basic fee, license, permit increases that we've talked about over the last year. So nothing significant there. And it also includes a $3.5 million proposed personnel increase, which includes both a merit and a market step. And it also includes in it a fairly nominal amount, about $350,000, for some operational increases that I will recommend to the council. And they're mainly concentrated in two areas: a couple of parks workers that Nancy's department has requested for helping maintain the new and the acquired parks. And then there's also some money out of that 350, which would go towards already committed software maintenance contracts, that sort of thing, of some programs that we've actually been cobbling money together over the last couple of years to make some initial payments as we switched over various software packages like the Ring Central phone system, just as an example. So there's also enough money in the budget to cover that. So with that as a sort of short descriptor of where we are, let me walk us back to the strategic plan discussion we had back in February. So at that time, you saw an initial estimate of revenues, but not of expenditures. We weren't to that point yet, as I remember. Shortly after that discussion, we put together the first revenue versus expenditure estimate, and we were about $6 million out, meaning short at the time. Now that's a large number, but it's not really unusual in the budget process for that time of year, first cut. So it's always a challenge to kind of decide, okay, how are we going to overcome that deficit? But it's not unusual in any way. And so this, from that standpoint, looked like another kind of normal year. If you'll kind of hold that to the side, at the same time that we were in those budget strategizing sessions and discussions between finance and administration, you all will remember that the federal government was talking about this relief and stimulus package, which they passed sometime in February. Maybe it was March, can't remember now. When that federal stimulus relief package was passed, $28 million was designated for direct distribution to West Valley City, of which $14 million would be distributed in this budget year. And by this budget year, I mean the budget year we're in right now. And the other $14 million would be distributed no earlier than 1 year from the first distribution. So the first distribution should actually be arriving here anytime now. Our designated date that we were told to expect to receive that would be about May 11th. And with our contacts in Washington, Nicole checking on that and all that sort of thing, that still seems to be the plan, and nothing's changed there. And that was actually passed federal law. So that's as close to certain as you can get without actually having that check in the bank. Now, having that extra money posed a different sort of a budget question for us than we normally have to deal with. On the one hand, as you all know, I never, unless there's some dire emergency, propose using one-time or fund balance money for operational expenditures. And I don't per se plan on doing that this time either. But on the other hand, we also have a $6 million operational deficit to fulfill from that first cut. So I obviously was going to consider what to do with this $14 million in the context of that. Having had that evaluation and discussion, here is what I'm proposing. Went back to the finance department and did a review with them of our whole debt service schedule, and determined that by setting aside $16 million, so that would be $14 million out of this federal distribution, along with another $2 million from our fund balance, our existing fund balance reserves, By doing that, we could free up roughly $4 million in ongoing operational money to the budget, which would go towards solving that $6 million deficit. Now, just to sort of further explore and describe how that would work, basically all we're saying is on an annual basis, and we talk about this all the time, whether we're paying, and I'm looking at a couple examples here on my computer monitor, whether we're paying $13,000 in a year on a public safety radio lease, or whether we're paying almost $500,000 a year on a energy savings projects fund or bond that we did some years ago. That's all operational money that comes out of the general fund budget, right? So in consultation with the finance department, we came up with a list of about 20 items that would, by putting them in a what we would call a debt service defeasance fund, will service that debt service and until that is paid off and that debt service is removed. And again, like I said, so what that does is it frees up about $4 million in operational money, which left us with about a $2 million deficit. We resolved the $2 million deficit by going back across these last couple, 3 months, and we've done 2 or 3 or 4 cuts, frankly, at looking at where do our revenues look like they're shaping up. We cut some expenditures, and we did a couple of other things along that line to basically find the $2 million, which once again, $2 million is no insignificant amount of money, obviously, in the real sense. But when comparing it as a percentage basis against $89.4 million, which is what our proposed budget is this year, it's not that large of amount out of that. So, okay, so hold all that for a second in thoughts, and then let me also speak to our fund balance and why this makes sense, I think, to do. So our annual financial report, which we received in December, and you've heard this number before, gave us a fund balance amount of $19 million, which is about, or was at the time, about 22-ish% of the overall general fund budget. Well above what the minimum is required, also well above what the council's kind of determined by policy level is we'd like to hold, but well below what the maximum allowable level is by state. Going into 2021, if you keep that same time period in mind, so that would mean December of this upcoming year, after we finish this fiscal year and after the audit is completed, the end of December, our projections, again, working with finance, are that we should be somewhere between $19 and $23 million in fund balance, depending on how some of these other federal and or other reimbursements pan out or don't pan out. So worst case scenario, we project that we'll be the same. We won't go down at all in our fund balance. Better case scenario, we would be above or well above that. None of that figure includes the $14 million discussion that I just described for you. So basically what would happen here is if we do this as is recommended and take $16 million of fund balance money to balance that or to pay down or reserve for those debt service amounts, that will leave us a net $2 million-ish that we would take from that 19. So worst case scenario, that would put us back at $17 million, which would in fund balance, which would be 19% of the general fund amount. So another bit of just description. How is it that we're able to use that federal money, and what are the guidelines? The information that we have, and this is both in terms of our discussion with the representatives of the lawmakers as well as the reading of the law itself. The guidelines will be basically the same as they were under the CARES Act. Now, there's all kinds of COVID expenditures that we're making, which I'm sure we could come up with the $14 million amount. But there's one particular description of guideline, which we used for CARES money, and I intend to use again, which is a presumption allowable presumption under the federal guidelines that public safety costs are presumptively COVID related. Certainly out of our, I think it's like $43 million of public safety expenditures on an annual basis. Under that scenario, $14 million of it would be qualifying as those COVID related expenses. What that means is that $14 million eventually, after reimbursing on the public safety side, ends up as fund balance from which we would be able to draw or move that money to that debt service defeasance schedule. So 3 things basically I've talked about there: where we started out from an operational look or standpoint, what we're doing with that on the operations standpoint, where the fund balance picture is, and what the prescribed use of this federal money would be. It's a highly unusual situation in terms of how we would consider or come up with a budget proposal. Never, and by highly unusual, I mean unique. I've never seen that before and probably won't see it again in my career. There is one other item in there which I didn't add to, which is this second $14 million that the federal government by law, at least currently, is saying they will be distributing to us a year from now. I'm not counting any of that money in any of these calculations that I just described to you. And the reason for that is the federal situation right now being in just such a state of flux as it is, the COVID pandemic also being in a state of constant change. I didn't want to count on any of that for any of the calculations we're making here. So bottom line, all over, just to restate sort of what I said, we are balanced. We're able to provide that personnel increase. We did not need to cut operations. We also did not need to propose any tax increases. And net basis, we will see the advantage of paying down or having a pot of money reserved to pay down a very significant chunk of our debt service. And in exchange for that, worst case scenario, we would be $2 million less on our fund balance side. Probable case scenario, we should be well above whatever our current level is. Let me see, Mayor, real quick, if you wouldn't mind, if I've got any other notes I wanted to add to that. I don't see anything here in my notes that I missed. So with that, I will stop. And if there are any questions from the council, yourself, Mayor, I'd be glad to answer them.
Okay, Mr. Pyle, from just to kind of summarize it for me, and perhaps for maybe those listening in, the majority of this budget is simply a continuation.
Correct.
We're still funding the police department, fire department, parks, all those sorts of things, streets. So there's nothing unusual there. The things that are being added are related to employee compensation or benefits. Then a few items that you mentioned for some additional personnel. I think you mentioned Parks and Recreation. And those are the only differences really in our budget. So
that's correct. Other than moving money around within the departments as they sit right now, there are no changes other than the ones you just described, Mayor.
But even the moving money around among the departments is fairly minor.
Yes. And also, like I said, restricted to within the department itself.
Yeah, yeah. So when we talk about this, our budget is pretty well simply a continuation of providing the same services that we have been providing in the past. And we've had growth in a few contracts. We've had growth in the acreage of parks with the taking over a couple of parks from the county, and we need to cover those to provide the same level of service that has existed in the past. So
correct.
That's just kind of a summary, maybe more, just another way of saying it.
Yes,
With that
absolutely.
then, council members, do you have any questions or any comments regarding this budget? I think I would add one more thing for the public, and that is that Mr. Pyle indicated there is not any proposed tax increase. But as we traditionally do when we address the budget in August, there is a balancing part that we do that looks like a tax increase due to the way state law was written about truth in taxation. But really what happens is a realignment of the property tax. So when we say there's no tax increase, overall there is not. But there is a rebalancing that we have to go through and publicly disclose. And it looks like usually it's been a half to, I think the highest ever been is like 1.5, hasn't it, Mr. Pyle?
Yeah, on a
Judgment levy.
normal basis, Mayor, yeah, that's right. On a normal basis, it's usually somewhere between 70-ish thousand and a couple of 100,000. And in a couple of extreme years, because of some tax appeals, it was as high as $1 million.
Yeah, and that was merely the county at a late date redistributing the tax burden, changing what was originally scheduled on taxes. And in order to balance that out, we have to modify that overall. So
Yes.
pretty straightforward. Anything else on the budget? Not hearing anything else. Any final comments, Mr. Pyle?
Only I appreciate you making that mention of the judgment levy, Mayor. I would have forgotten that. The other thing I probably ought to set up just calendar wise is because we do consider the judgment levy every year, that means we automatically calendar for a truth and taxation hearing, which means we don't do a final adoption of the general fund budget until August, as you know. We also tonight will briefly mention the other three legal entities that we have budgets for, the RDA, the Building Authority, and the Housing Authority. And we will be proposing a final adoption of those in June. But we'll do the tentative adoption or propose the tentative adoption of them at the same time next week as the general fund.
All right, thank you. With that, not hearing any further comments, thank you, Mr. Pyle. We'll move on to Resolution 21-64, the execution agreement to reimburse Phil Conde for certain stormwater facilities expenses. And Dan Johnson will take that, and actually he'll stay on the line. I think you're going to do the next one too. So, but let's address first 21-64.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Not if you can hear me.
Yes.
Great, thank you. This is just a reimbursement agreement with developers. So Phil Conde is developing property approximately 4,600 west and about 4,200 south. Historically, the city has had roughly 20 to 30 acres of developed neighborhood that has just drained onto this property. And it's always been our plan to connect this water out to 4,100 south. In fact, when we did the 4,100 south roadway project, we extended a storm drain pipe out at Conde Lane so that we could pick this water up. And now that the land is developing, the developer normally would be required to install a storm drain to get his own water out to 4,100 south. But we've asked him to upsize that storm drain to from a 15-inch storm drain to a 18 and then a 24-inch pipe to accommodate existing city water. And so we're asking the council for authorization to execute to pay Mr. Conde the difference between the 15-inch pipe and the 18 and 24-inch pipe. And there's a couple more changes that have come up during construction, and there may be a modification to the dollar amount that comes before the council next week, but essentially that's what's happening here. So are there any questions?
Council? Not hearing any. Then we'll go to Resolution 21-65 to approve a lease agreement, kind of an interesting one, between the city and UDOT for construction going on 2700 West. Mr.
Yes,
Johnson.
thank you. Thank you. So this is definitely a little bit unique. Normally, when we're doing work like this on a property, we would get a temporary construction easement. And that's generally how we handle these types of things. We approached the state of Utah with a desire to get a temporary construction easement. And due to their processes, they recommended that it would be quicker if they proposed a lease. And so in essence, we're leasing the a described portion of this property, essentially the eastern 70 feet or so, for us to go and build roadway embankment to put curb and gutter in on 2700 West. And it's a no-cost lease. Essentially the payment for the lease is accounted for in the removal of the existing trees, which are, would be something that the state wants removed anyways. And so this is definitely a unique thing, but there's no money exchanged for this lease. I believe the term is a year, and yeah, if there's any questions, I'll do my best.
Yeah, and though you say it's a unique type of lease arrangement, this is still part of the regular, normal, ongoing process of, the work we're doing along the edge of 2700 West.
Yeah.
So it's unique from a technical standpoint, but from a practical result, it's similar to those we've done in the past.
Yeah, and if it were not unique, we would normally stick something like this on the consent agenda, and you likely wouldn't even talk about it. But
yeah. Hearing no further comments, then we'll move forward to our communications, summer park events. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, and it looks like Nancy Day is going to take us through this communication.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and council members. It's good to see all of you again, and take an opportunity here to talk a little bit about some of our summer programs. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get this started. All right, can you all see that okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, wonderful.
Looks like
wonderful.
it's showing up.
Okay, well that is good. So yeah, we're going to be talking about some of the things that will be taking place this summer. We thought this would be pertinent to talk to you about a little bit because we had so many changes last year, and we're still under certain protocols that we need to follow. We don't know exactly when those will change. But it's important for us to be prepared, and the staff is very excited to get things going. So we'll really quickly go through a few things. Before I started to the summer programming slide, I did want to mention a couple of spring items. We do have typically at Stonebridge Golf Course, we have our Mother's Day brunch. Unfortunately, still being in that moderate transmission phase, we are unable to do that again this year. It's a couple weeks out, so we needed to cancel that. So 2022, we're hoping we'll have that back, and we'll be excited to have that event again. And then also over at the Cultural Celebration Center, they're just putting up an exhibit in the gallery. It will go from May 7th through June 23rd. And this is the Utah Watercolor Society Spring Exhibition, and also the Western Federation of Watercolor Societies exhibit. So you'll be able to go over and enjoy that a little bit. All right, so I put returns under the title Summer Programming. We did have some summer programming last year. We did have to change some things. We couldn't have our youth sports, but we could do youth sport clinics, just not the game. So we did whatever we could to still involve the families, involve the kids in our community in various programs. And then in the fall, we were able to offer a little bit more. Now we're pretty set. We still have to follow certain protocols, but we are able to have games. And for spring, we have over 500 kids signed up for soccer, They're going strong, a lot of really fun programs. So I didn't want you to see that and think we didn't do anything last year, because we did, but it was very different. The PUP and Spark programs, as you recall, the PUP program is the pop-up play program that we will do in different parks each night. And that's going to start up, I was going to put on here. So this will start up on May 3rd, and the nights and the parks that we'll be at. So we're hitting each district on Monday evenings, and this is from 5 to 6 at night, weather permitting. Mondays will be at City Park. Tuesdays will be at Peachwood Park, Wednesdays at Westview, and Thursdays at Parkway Park. So we're really excited to get things up and running with that program and see how that goes for us. And then the Spark program, now that's the program that we've done for several years now, probably 5 or 6. This is the program that we do during the summer lunch program, when they bring the summer lunch program to our parks. And we go to a variety of locations and offer activities and crafts and different things like that. Last year, they had to do that more virtually. They took some of the craft kits to the schools where they were giving the lunch out, because the schools didn't want, of course, groups gathering for a program like this. And they handed the crafts out to the kids, and there was a link on there to where we had the videos posted, so the kids could watch the videos and learn how to make them. I just found out a couple of days ago that they were planning on coming back to the parks for the summer lunch program. They are not this year. They're having staffing problems, and some of the schools are going to have classes at the schools during the summer this year. And so they're going to do the lunches at the schools again this year. We're trying to work with them to see if we can do the activities at the schools, or if they prefer that we follow the same guidelines that we did last year. So that's where we're at with that. Pickleball and tennis, we've got instructors. We're going to be running some clinics, classes, leagues, tournaments, and really getting some of that up and going. Adaptive biking and hiking, we're able to bring back. We have a couple groups that we work with that we take out or meet at various locations, even up at the Wasatch, and do some hiking with them. It's been a very, very good program for those populations. The same with outdoor recreation opportunities for our community as a whole, and developing more of that. We've had some of the big national tournaments that came to us at Centennial Park last year that want to come back. And so they've rescheduled, and we'll see those happening in the fall again. Talked about youth sports, also adult sports, still very big, very popular. We're working on protocols and changing things with golf tournaments and events, still at that moderate transmission level. It's a little bit more of a challenge for us to do some of the events and the weddings. But we have people that are starting to book and feeling more comfortable with that in the fall. But we are working on that as well. Senior programming, we just started last week allowing, we could allow some seniors on a reservation basis back into the Harmon Senior Recreation Center for the lunches. And there's a variety of protocols we have to follow with that, but we're still doing the drive-through lunch pickup, and then also the indoor lunches and a couple small classes that we're able to accommodate. So we're working on it. We're getting there. And then, of course, as you heard last week with the theater and the Cultural Celebration Center, we've got productions that are going, a lot of positive reviews on the production that's there now, Ain't Misbehaving. And if any of you watched Fox 13 this morning, Big Buddha was out there and they did a great job. As well as we have conferences and other groups wanting to come back and use the Cultural Celebration Center. So those are also being scheduled. So here's some ongoing events that we've got throughout the summer. These are the dates for the movie in the parks that will be at Centennial Park. And the movies start at dusk, which is typically right around 9:30. That's usually a pretty good time. And I don't have the name of the movies yet, but once I do, we'll make sure they get on your calendar. Then we are also going to start up the concerts at Fairborn Station. Again, we're hoping that we'll be able to get to low transmission fairly soon. If not, we may have to change how we do these things. But with the concerts, we're going to do a kickoff event on June 9th. That ties in with the next tab over there on the food trucks. So these will be every Wednesday. The food trucks will be there every Wednesday. Concerts will be on the dates that you see listed there. But with the kickoff event, we're going to have the we'll have the band, we'll have the food trucks, we'll have some activities that the staff are going to provide, maybe some booths, and really have some fun with that. Then, as you know, July is National Park and Recreation Month, and the kind of the theme this year is our park and recreation story, and really talking about and showing how we make our community strong, vibrant, and resilient. And we really are trying to reach out more and more with the community. As you may recall, about 3 years ago, we started a park giveaway where the park staff, if they see somebody in the park, they'll give them a Frisbee or a water bottle or a kite, and just say hi, and what would you like to see here, or just get to know them, kind of break that down a little bit, and really get some one-on-one feedback from some of the people using our parks while our staff are there. So here's some of the activities for Park and Recreation Month that we're planning on doing this July. So the Family Fitness Center also houses the recreation department. So of course they always have a little bit more because of the staff that's there. But on July 9th, you can see the skate park and the bike park, the pump track, kind of a party out there. $1 admission at the fitness center and the outdoor Centennial Pool, July 16th through the 18th. Every Monday at the outdoor pool, there will be some twilight rates that they'll be offering, different food and drink specials. And on Fridays that month, there'll be a family fun night where there'll be different activities and different things planned for the families to come out. And then the golf courses, you can see they've kind of attached some of the food and beverage items to, if they buy a lunch or a breakfast or get a free bucket of balls. So there's a few things like that. At the Ridge on July 10th, there'll be a golf clinic. And then on the 16th at Stonebridge, Clark, our head PGA pro, will be out on the driving range offering some tips and lessons to those that would like that. Over in our arts and culture division, we're going to tie in a little bit with that PUP program, that pop-up play, and do some arts in the parks at the different parks, and really utilize some of the staff there to connect and kind of get the community doing a little bit of arts and see how much fun we can have there. And then also continue and enhance our theater awareness promotions throughout the month as well. And during that month is when we have Footloose going on. So we may even bring out some of the staff there to mingle with the public a little bit and maybe teach them a thing or two, kind of have fun with that. At the Harmon Senior Recreation Center, during COVID, the progressive lunch was really a hit with the seniors. So we're going to do that again, where they'll visit several parks and have different activities as part of their lunch program. And then on the 28th in the evening, we're going to do a backyard barbecue, which I think now has been changed to a Dutch oven meal, and different games and things like that. And then our park maintenance staff, they're going to offer a Xeriscape landscaping class for the community that want to come out and learn a little bit more about that. And the Pamper Your Park promotion, what that's going to be is we're going to reach out to the neighbors, and so it can be individuals or families or youth groups, and they will come to the fitness center to pick up garbage bags and a list of a few things that they could do without our staff needing to be there in their park or a park that they use, and be able to really take care of that and take some ownership on that. And finally, here's just a few more summer events that I wanted to highlight. Of course, we have WestFest that is back this year, June 17th through the 20th, depending on if we change to low transmission or not at that time. You may see things happen a little bit differently, but these are all of the things that we are planning on doing this year. Again, it may look just a little different, but it'll be good to have it back. We're excited. At Centennial Pool, Centennial Outdoor Pool opens Memorial Weekend, which is May 29th, 30th, and 31st. But the Saturday before that, on the 22nd in the afternoon, we're having a Family Fitness Center member luau. So anybody that's a member at the Family Fitness Center will be able to enjoy the pool, and we'll have some food there and lays and different activities for all of them to enjoy that. We have several ribbon cutting events happening. The first, as you know, Tuesday, May 25th At 3:30, we're going to do the ribbon cutting for the reopening at Parkway Park after we made the improvements with the grant that we received. Then after that, there'll be some refreshments, but we have staff that are going to be there to do different activities with the families and the neighbors, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And we'll show them how to use some of the different elements that have been added to the park. We don't have an exact date yet for the Dino Dig area, which is that outdoor play area by the Edutainment Center of the fitness center. But we're still waiting on delivery of a few items. Delivery with different products has been fairly slow, but we're hoping by the end of May, we'll also be able to have a ribbon cutting there. And this is exciting. This is actually groundbreaking for the mayor's Guardians of Freedom Memorial, where his Veterans Hall will also be. And that's on Memorial Day on the 31st at 10 a.m. And so we're putting together a program for that I think will be really nice. And, you know, a great way to honor those that sacrificed so much on Memorial Day by having a groundbreaking for this, this memorial. And then towards the end of fall or kind of towards the end of summer, I should say, we should be having a ribbon cutting for that outdoor Centennial Bike Park that we talked about a month ago. And other events, these are some national events that we are promoting through our social media and letting people know about. On June 12th, it's National Family Health and Fitness Day. So we'll be sending out information on different ideas that the families could do together to honor that. And then on the 15th is National Nature Photography Day. And I can't remember, I apologize, but one of you brought that up last year. So we made a note of it so that we would be sure and have that as a list, as an event, excuse me, during the summer. This is the national day that's honored for that. We're going to ask people in our community as they go out and take pictures to send them to us to be able to post on our Facebook page and really be able to share some wonderful nature photos from within our community. And that is all I have. I don't know if you have any questions or comments. I'd be happy to answer that now.
Council?
I have a
So Nancy, I've noticed the green boxes by the skate park are getting tagged every once in a while. Can we put a wrap on that? They seem to not be graffitied after we put a wrap on them and have something like either skateboarders or bikers, something that relates to the property.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I will get with John Rock, and I know he's the one that set that up in the community, and see what his resources are for that. But I like what you say about tying it in with the skateboarder biking theme that's right there. So that's a great idea.
And then I noticed you're taking out some landscaping on the northwest side of the fitness center.
Yes.
What are we doing there?
That is part of the energy savings plan that's being put in. So without getting into all of the technical information, it might be easy. Might be easier for me to put an email together and send that out to all of you. So excellent question. If you're okay with that, but it's part of something that's really going to save the fitness center a lot of energy, and that's units that need to be put in. We've done a lot of research to make sure that they're not going to be too loud and things along those lines. But I'll put an email together and make sure we send that out to you.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
My comment is just to ask Nicole to get all of these park events on the council calendar, please.
Absolutely. Thanks, sir.
Nancy, as you're doing your planning, don't forget farmers markets.
Yes, Don, thank you for bringing that up. We have talked about that, and I will be honest, and I think you're familiar with this. We've had a really difficult time getting somebody on board to help us manage the farmers markets. We last year, of course, we couldn't have them. And this year we had somebody lined up and then they backed down, and then we had somebody else lined up and they backed down. So we are still wanting to do something with that in the fall. So if anybody has any resources of somebody that's managed farmers markets that can help us out a little bit, we'd certainly appreciate it. So, but thank you, Don. We are working on that.
Thank you.
Hearing no further comments or questions. Nancy, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item. Council calendar. Any questions on the calendar? Hearing none, we'll move to reviewing the agendas for the 3 different agencies, redevelopment, housing authority, municipal building authority. Oh, wait a minute, I skipped new business. Potential future agenda items. I do have one I want to suggest, but.
See, aren't you glad I reminded you?
Huh?
Aren't you glad I reminded you?
Yes. Doesn't sound like anyone else has any, so I know there's been a lot of media attention, both in the regular media and social media, on the 5 feet no parking rule that we adopted. And because there's been some feedback on that, or a fair amount of play in the media, I'm wondering if we ought to at least talk about it. I'm not saying we should change anything or that we should continue with it as it is, other than just because it's gotten a lot of play, if we ought to have a discussion, communication item on that just to review it.
I think if we did discuss it, you know, we might, now that they've had a week to play it up in the social media, we might even get some public comment on our open public comment time that we had about that before, when nobody bothered to say anything about it.
Yeah.
So that might be an idea.
Well, that could come up. I know I had a very interesting conversation with a gentleman on this issue. And of course, he referred to the media, primarily the social media comments on the West Valley Police Department Facebook site. So,
Mayor, I think we need to ask the legal comment to send out the ordinance 21, I believe it's 21-12 is about this parking we passed in the past, and we need to study. I want to take a look at it first, and then we can discuss about this, because I have a couple of people, they talk to me about this, they're concerned about this. So first I want to take a look at that one, send out information, we can take a look, and before we can have a discussion.
one of the things that I would like, I mentioned this earlier as I was discussing with staff, and that is to come forward with kind of a review of the purpose of streets. In this discussion I had with the gentleman who called, he felt like he wanted that area of the street in front of his house to be his parking places for his cars. And I said, no, that we cannot do because it is public parking. That is, the way I stated it to help him understand was, that's the same as having a parking lot here at the city offices. It's paid for with taxpayer money. It is for use by the public, and it is not reserved for any particular individual. I didn't get into the handicap parking, issue, but generally speaking, that is public parking. And so what I would like for staff to do maybe is come back with a brief report, not a study, just a brief report of what are the purposes of the city having streets. Now you say, well, that's obvious, to get to and from your home, but there are other purposes such as stormwater drainage, and maybe just have a brief discussion on that and the impact. The individual wondered if we couldn't restrict parking to, the owners of the property. And I said, no, the city can approve, generally approve parking or put up no parking signs. It's either yes or no. You can't, or you can maybe limit it by time or day or something like that, or when it snows, but you can't restrict it by individuals, which.
And I think with that report, we need to include what the city can do with gated communities. I know a couple of the complaints I've had when I drove out to look at them, I couldn't see them because they were behind the closed gated community. And so.
Don, very good. Yes. In fact, I got one of those calls. And so I'm glad you brought that up because they expect us to go into those.
Yeah, but
and
we can't.
Yeah, we can't. And it's actually private property.
Yeah. So that could be part of that report
Yes.
too. So we know.
A brief summary. Anyone else want to comment on that?
Well, that would include mobile home parks and apartments, and we're not going to be in there enforcing our parking ordinance because they're not public roads.
Parking ordinance, including parking, whether parking is allowed or not, kind of thing. Yeah. If we could just have a little summary on that, we could enter into the record and discuss. We won't need to discuss most. I think the council are familiar with it, but I'd like to just kind of have a brief summary. If that's okay, without objection, I see several nodding heads, so we'll put that down in the near future. We don't want to put it too far out there because it's kind of a topic for right now, but Mr. Powell, you let us know when you have kind of a little summary report and add that to our communication items, okay?
Okay, will do, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other potential future agenda items that triggered thoughts of? If not, we'll go to council reports.
I'd just like to report on, as Ms. Day mentioned in her report, they are doing Ain't Misbehaving at the cultural, or the Harmon Hall. And I attended that over the weekend. Great program, a lot of good music. It is a musical review, so don't go expecting a big, deep play or theme or anything like that. Just go and enjoy the music. But it's got a tremendous 12-person cast that were highlighted today on Fox 13. So it's a great play to go see.
Okay. Any other reports? Hearing none. Now we will get to the other three agencies. Mr. Pyle somewhat introduced this when he said that we would be doing the budgets for those three, and that looks like what these are, Mr. Pyle. Is that correct?
Correct, Mayor. Absolutely. And if I could do, I think a very quick summary will suffice to sort of illustrate what's going on with each. So as we know, the redevelopment agency has 16 project areas in total. That did not change in this year. Neither did the budget amount significantly. It's going from a adopted this current year to a tentative proposed for next year of $17,034,057 to $17,022,276. So as you can see, it's in effect basically unchanged. Nothing really there to talk about unless there are any questions on the RDA specifically. The Housing Authority budget, just pulling it up here for a moment, is also same programs. The dollar amount is a little bit different. It's basically gone up about $500,000 from 3.3 million to 3.85. I think that just reflects extra federal funding we got during the year. But operationally, in terms of the programs, nothing's really changed there either. The Housing Authority budget, or I'm sorry, the Building Authority budget, is one that basically serves as a debt service vehicle. And you'll notice as you look across the years that the numbers pretty wildly swing, and it's because they are a debt service vehicle, basically, that you don't see any really operational costs that are consistent from year to year. This just takes money in to make debt service payments and then sends that money out to make the same payment. There is a little bit of a difference this year in terms of how the numbers are reflected. In years past, what you would see is a revenue figure coming in with a single number, really basically called funding other sources, that would reflect that number. Now, instead of showing an actual revenue figure, there's really basically a built-in negative expense reflected in various transfers in that then also reflect against the actual expense out, with a net therefore showing a total expenditures of zero. So of course there's really not zero expenditures. That's just the way that the accounting is shown for that. And then I'm going to call an audible here real quickly and ask Mr. Welch if he's on, just to talk a little bit about why we would be showing that accounting, so to speak, in terms of how it's reflected in the budget. Jim, are you on? Did you hear all that?
Yep. Sorry, I've had to unmute my microphone. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm certainly here. And the Building Authority, as Mr. Pilot mentioned, is a fund or facility for facilitating debt service payments, where money are transferred from other funds, from the general fund, from the other, like the fitness center or the golf courses, the Maverick Center, to make debt service payments. When those come in, from an accounting point of view, they're considered transfers. They're not considered revenues. And that's why they show up in a revenue. The reason if you go back and look at the actuals for a number of years back, you will see some revenue lines in there. And those are generally for projects that we've taken on and the result of bond proceeds for new construction projects. But other than that, it will just show up as a transfer and money coming in and money going out to make those payments.
Okay, thanks, Jim. So
Yeah.
in effect, really what that means is that zero revenue line will change if we have projects, but currently we're not projecting any projects in the next year. Is that a good way to describe that?
That's a very good way to describe it, yes.
Okay.
Okay, with that then, council, any questions or comments? Hearing none, that looks like we have finished our agenda, since we do not have a need for a closed session. Any other comments, anything before we adjourn? If not, then a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Without objection, then, we will stand adjourned. Hearing no objections, we are adjourned. Thank you, and we'll see you in